Whoa.
What the fuck happened? Oh, there you go.
My computer has been slowing down. I am an idiot, dude. I was watching... Yeah, I swear I usually hear my voice, but whatever.
I think you're tripping, man. I don't ever hear mine.
Okay. So I was watching a video on how to hook up remote play for the PlayStation.
Yeah, I got that hooked up.
Yeah, okay. So the video seemed legit because it was a guy in a room with his phone, and I was like, that's my setup. That's what I'm doing. And he said, if you just click below on the link, you can download remote play. And I looked below and it said PlayStation remote play with a link. And I wasn't thinking, you already know, dude.
I am super disappointed that this fucking fool got you.
Dude, I know better. And I just wasn't thinking. I was like, okay, because I had been messing with all the streaming stuff for hours at this point. So I was just in that flow, and he was like, click the link. I was like, I need the link. And I just clicked, and it looked like the PlayStation website.
Man, what you need to do. Hold on, let me figure out what it is. there's a feature you're using Safari. What web browser are you using?
Safari.
All right.
Wait. Yeah, it must have been Safari. It was a link from YouTube, like below his screen. So stupid, dude. But I get these pop-ups all the time. It's like update Flash Player.
All right. So in Safari, if you click View and you click Show Status Bar, when you hover your cursor over a link, regardless of what it's typed out as on the bottom left-hand corner of your window, it's going to show you the exact web URL it's going to bring you to. So, I mean, people do this shit all the time in emails where they'll email you a link or they'll text message you a link. It's called phishing or smishing, where it's a fake link and it looks like it's going to bring you to the website you want to go to, like PlayStation Play. But it brings you to some fucking... It installs some bullshit on your machine, and now you probably have Mac Keeper or something on your Mac.
Mac Keeper? No, I don't have Mac Keeper.
That's a common one.
Yeah.
But but it's just because you think it's legit, and you click on the link, and then you type in your password to like give it administrator approval to install itself on your machine, and you're fucked.
Damn.
Yeah, you didn't even have to tell me the rest of that story. I knew where that shit was.
Yeah, you probably saw that a million times. So how do I get rid of that? I looked in the App Store at like virus protection and stuff, but I don't know what's what.
Man, probably an easy one for you to use that's free is Malware Bytes for Mac. Just download that. There's a pay version, but don't worry about the pay version. Just get the free version, run that shit, and that should catch most everything.
Okay.
And then offline, there's a website I'll share with you where if you still think it's running slow and you have some shit kind of hidden in the library files, there's a website that I use that can give you a pretty good walkthrough of how to dig into your file system and find that shit to get rid of it. But it gets kind of complicated, and if you dig in there too deep and delete the wrong shit, you can fuck your Mac up. So I'd rather you just run Malware Bytes for Mac first and see if that fixes it, and then we can look at that other route. But yeah, man, nothing's been up. I fucking got a chance to see my sister, my nephew today. Came in from North Carolina for just one day, so that was cool. So I did.
That's nice.
Yeah, man. I don't ever get to see my family nearly enough, so that was really, really cool. When we brought him to this in Henderson, we brought him to this like prehistoric park where they have like all these dinosaurs that are like, dinosaur statues or whatever. And I thought it was gonna be like animatronics where they're like all moving around and shit. It was like $12 a person. So like all together with all the adults we had, it was like they ended up making $70 on us. And it's this half-mile thing through the woods in Henderson, and they have a speaker in the middle of the woods playing dinosaur sounds. But like when you walk up to the dinosaur, it's just a little figurine of it. I mean, they're big, it looks cool. My little nephew liked it, but I was like, this is fucking bullshit, man. They're charging these plastic horse shit in front of me, and it's not even like moving or anything. My parents recently took a trip to Colorado, and like on the way they stopped at this gas station and had a video for free at this gas station. These giant fucking dinosaurs that were moving and making noise and shit, and had actual robotics and shit going on in them. And that was free. And here we go pay
Free?
for the that was free at a gas station.
Oh, at a gas station.
Yeah, and somewhere out west.
But
So down here in fucking Louisiana, we're paying $12 to fucking walk a half-mile loop around
that's what I was gonna
around
say.
the woods, getting eaten by mosquitoes to look at some plastic fucking dinosaurs. Now, when you walk in, when you finish your half-mile loop and walk into the back, they have this little tunnel, which is like a fucking 8x10 room that has like 4 robotic dinosaurs in it. And so my little nephew freaked out about that. So they had 4 of them, but like, I don't know, I felt fucking ripped off. You can get that shit at a gas station out west somewhere, and we paid $12 a person to fucking.
They don't have a half mile loop to walk around though at the gas station.
And it was cool. Like I said, my little nephew enjoyed himself, and whatever.
Yeah, but
support local business, right?
So is there any reason for this dinosaur park in Henderson? Was there dinosaur bones discovered in this area, or is just this random pop-up of like, hey,
it's a kid's attraction.
Check out what we got. Come check out what we got.
Have you heard of that RV park down here, Cajun Palms? It was probably built somewhere around the time whenever you were still living here, when we go to Zach's house and stuff. It's right by Zach's old house, right? Our buddy Zach is another drummer.
I've heard that name.
Yeah, Cajun Palms is big ass nice RV park. It's all right there. So it's like, I guess people come with their RVs, they stay at the RV park right around the corner. There's this like prehistoric park you can bring your kids to. Right next door to that, there's this indoor go-kart place. So it's like a whole little
indoor go-kart.
Yeah,
that's badass.
Yeah, I didn't even know it was there until today when I drove by it.
Is it the same thing where you show up and it's a ripoff because you don't actually drive the carts? They're stationary on a track and you just ride around inside.
The way I ripped off at that place, yeah.
This is
I'm talking shit. I'm talking shit on this poor place, but you know what? Like, my little nephew had a fucking blast. Like, he was freaking out the whole time. So
that's good.
Whatever. It did the job for what we were there for. It's not there, I guess, for adults to really learn about the Jurassic period and fucking
That's brilliant to make some like subpar science attraction and then market it to kids so that you do get the adults and they can't complain about it because it's marketed to kids. It's like the ultimate fuck you as a business owner.
They did it. They fucking did it.
They did their job as much as it sucked, and like, you know, it's just such a twist.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, whatever. Like I said, it was good because my little nephew got to enjoy himself.
That's good. That's good.
Yep. And then
I went to the Natural Museum. I don't know, Natural History Museum in Chicago, and it was where the T-Rex is, Sally or whatever.
Oh yeah,
Sasha Baron Cohen. That's what the name of that T-Rex is. And you go into the first exhibit, and it's like 3D sound. This reminded me of what you were talking about. It's this 3D sound in this dark exhibit with carpet on the walls, and it's the first to the whole museum. So it's 3D sound, and you sit, and it's dark, and I got so high. I don't know how we were visiting my cousin with my grandma, and I don't know how my aunt and my cousins got weed in Chicago. I guess, I don't know, but it was really good stuff.
Well, right now it's legal in Chicago, recreationally.
It wasn't then. It was like 2008 or 9.
It definitely wasn't then.
So high, man. And they had this illustration of prehistoric dinosaur times, this big panoramic nature view. So you just sit and you look at this like projector on the wall of like dinosaurs moving by, and it loops or it's random, so you can sit there for a long time and just watch the submersive.
How long were you just baked sitting there?
It felt like a long time because it was really cool, man. The sound was amazing. You could feel it in the wall, but it was badass.
See, that's worth $12.
Yeah.
God damn it. Fucking got us. They got us.
They got one speaker in the middle of a half-mile loop.
Look, you know what? I can screen share. I'll show you a couple pictures of it.
Chicago had 3D audio and like a dim lit soundproof theater.
All right, here you go. There's some of your dinosaurs that I saw. I mean,
Dude.
they're big, but they're all plastic. They didn't move.
It's good artwork. They're made well.
Yeah, they were. They were kind of like the paint was kind of chipping on them and shit. I guess I was looking too close at all that type of stuff. Like this doesn't look realistic.
Is it actual size? Is this replica stuff?
I think so, man.
Because if it's actual size and it's replica, that's pretty cool. Because you can at least sit there and be like, "Oh man, imagine if that T-Rex was real."
Yeah. Yeah, I'm talking too much shit on it. I have my expectations set too high.
Right.
Like a little fucking kid. Like, God damn it, I didn't get my money's worth out of it. Yeah, it was cool. My little nephew. There you go. All right. That's enough. So that's what I did today.
Is that the half-mile loop right there, or is that a
that was on the half mile loop. No, this is what we were talking about last time. Durrington Walls, Woodhinge, and then this is we'll talk about some of this today.
Yeah, I got some stuff on Mounds, man, and I looked into ley lines, and it turns out Alfred Watkins is the guy. There's Norman Lockyer too, but Alfred Watkins is the guy, and he wrote a book called let me see. Straight on the Track. Frick, I forgot the name of the book. I got it right here.
So summarize it for me. Give me the synopsis of Straight on the Track by Alfred. Did your video freeze? Or are you just sitting there super still? All right. I think your video froze. Are you fucking with me super hard? Oh.
How bad is it? How bad is it, Jesse?
How bad is it that your computer is restarting because of fucking malware?
Yeah.
That's pretty damn bad. Pretty bad.
Damn. It's like
folks, blame all the tech issues from this episode on him this time.
Yeah.
Last episode, it was me with my fucking headphones and my voice sounding robotic or whatever the fuck you said. This time it's your fault.
I got remote play working though. I downloaded the correct software and I got remote play working.
Oh, that's what really matters in this equation. You gave your computer fucking AIDS, but remote play for your PlayStation.
I did fuck up though, man, because my computer's been. I get the pop up and then I've had Finder windows that pop up. Boom, 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 and the file that it shows that it's saving it as is it has like the same name or something. Boom. I forgot the name, but it's like
you really probably need to run MacKeeper. I'm not Mac. Definitely don't run MacKeeper. No one download MacKeeper on your devices. You need to run Malwarebytes for Mac.
Malwarebytes. Okay. Definitely.
Does it restart a lot like that, or it's kind of
not a lot? It did the first one yesterday or the day before. And then it just did it right now.
All right. Well, we'll see how far we get.
I think we'll be fine. I think we'll be fine. So it happened at the right time.
Okay. At the right time, did it?
Yeah, right after the dinosaur segment into actually starting the content.
Yeah, that'd be useful. Sorry. What
do you have for this one? Where are you at?
So I want to finish off on we've been talking about Randall Carlson's lecture for almost this is the 4th episode now, right?
Yeah.
So let's finish this out, man. We got Earthworks to talk about, and he wraps it up at the end. And then, if you have a couple other topics, I know you said you were looking into, didn't you say he has some additional Earthworks things to cover?
Yeah.
And then you said Dennis Ovens you were looking into as well. So do you want me to kick it off and share my screen?
I didn't look into that for this one. That'll be just I can share your screen because you got all that stuff ready for the Mounds. I think it was Serpent Mound, but this stuff is super fascinating.
Yep, I have Serpent Mound up, ready to go. All right, can you folks see it? Let me minimize this. All right. So Serpent Mound. So we left off. You want to kind of recap on where we were at? So we kind of left off at talking about um, these earthworks that are in the Ohio River and Mississippi River Valley over here in North America that were constructed before or around the same time as the pyramids in Egypt. So back in the old world, as they call it. Um, the Where the Sumerians, around the same time, the Sumerians constructed the ziggurats as well. All this stuff was taking place around the same time. And from the artist depictions and the remaining structures we have from these earthworks, it's pretty apparent that they were constructed as a way for them to be able to observe the heavens or the cosmos from different perspectives. And they were measuring extremely specific um, cosmic movements, things like the maximum northern moonrise that only happens 18.61 years, once every 16 years, things like that, right? Very, very specific cosmic movements that would have been extremely hard to measure at that time. So we left off looking at the Serpent Mound, which this particular Serpent Mound is one of the largest serpent effigies in the world. And it was built on a ridge.
A lot of them are.
Yeah, they're built on this ridge. And the raised ridge that this particular Serpent Mound is sitting on is the remnant of a cosmic ream, which is basically where a comet hit and left a scar about 5 miles wide, and it caused these giant subterranean boulders to launch up into the air and land in different parts throughout this serpent effigy. And if you look into the ancient symbology around the serpent, and this is just some more views of it right here. Look into the ancient symbology. The serpent has many meanings, but one of them that's most important is related to celestial phenomena, especially comets. There are many accounts of comets that were written down as celestial serpents or celestial dragons, as they're sometimes known. And it's very interesting that on the edge of a giant star wound we have here on Earth, we find one of the largest serpent effigies in the world. So this is very important to these ancient cultures.
Almost like they built the serpent to commemorate the comet.
Exactly. So and then he goes into some of what the driving force of biological evolution is, and he talks about cosmobiogenesis. And he doesn't go deeply into this, but this is extremely interesting stuff because it's basically talking about how these comments bring DNA to Earth that eventually lead to life on Earth, right?
Yeah, man.
Comets were the cosmic spermatozoan of Earth. It's the way he described it, I believe.
Yeah, adenine and guanine are the two ones, and those they did a study, man. There was a study in where was it? Antarctica, where 12 comets hit, and 9 of them were recovered from Antarctica. No. I'm sorry. 9 of them had adenine and guanine in them, and those are the two things that build life. They're nucleobases or something. They're 2 of 4 nucleobases, something like that.
And he didn't go over this part too much, or is that? I don't recall. Is that like did he say something along the lines of like that can only come from?
Yeah. Well, I was curious. I read into it.
Space.
And they did this study, and 9 of these comets had the adenine and guanine, and they studied the ice that the comet hit, and the ice barely had any adenine and guanine, and the soil where they hit had none. And that was done by what
So they found actual comets that were
yeah.
not.
This is an actual major study. I got the name here, National Academy of Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. It's published there. And Michael Callan, astrobiologist, lead author of the paper at the NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center, he said you would expect to see a wider variety of stuff coming in from these comets, basically, if they're carrying all of these things from different parts of the universe. But in these comets, you only find adenine and guanine. So no matter where these comets are coming from, you're only finding these two things. And he
So
said, if it really is random, you should be finding so much more.
that's kind of crazy. So that being the case, these things could be like any habitable planet in the known universe. These things could be basically dropping off building blocks to life to those.
Yeah,
That could eventually lead to.
let me be
Go
more
ahead.
specific. Yeah, he said they're like a working as a factory for prebiotic life. You would expect them to produce more various forms of nucleobases, compounds.
Hmm.
But just the nucleobase, the things that create life, you would expect more. So, it's not made up of, these comets aren't made up of only adenine and guanine, but you get it.
Well, I get that, yeah. But adenine and guanine are found on these comets.
And that's kind of made me wonder about the origin myth, how they talk about this thing coming from the sky and a burning ball of light and the comet and the spaceship and the, Quetzalcoatl and all this. And if that's part of the creation myth of creating everything, then what if it's an allegory for adenine and guanine coming here and starting evolution?
Could be.
Doesn't have to be a lizard serpent man that came in on a UFO.
That's a could be.
I mean, if they are advanced in the sciences and know these things about life, which they do, then that seems kind of plausible to me that they're just talking about adenine and guanine. Maybe.
Yeah, and and if we're a lot of the stuff we've been talking about with like the sacred numbers and things like that, and that are even used in the Bible, seems like these ancient cultures had like a habit of like telling stories as representations of these very important origins of life on our planet, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right, so moving back, then he moves from that right back to some of the earthworks, right? And these are some of the remains that are still there in the Okmulgee Mounds in Macon, Georgia, or Macon, Georgia. And it looks like to me like a truncated pyramid, right?
Yeah.
This is an artist's depiction of him. Then all of the
Actually,
position. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okmulgee Mound looks like like some small town abandoned oil refinery. It just looks like, if I were to drive by and see it, I'd be like, oh look, it's just some hill where they put, like a big septic tank for the city. It doesn't
Right.
actually look like a monument. It just looks so normal.
I might think it's a landfill or something that's been
That's
grown over.
what exactly, a landfill, something like that. I mean, they got that ladder at the top, so I just imagine there's a service guy that goes there like once a week to check the pipe pressure or something.
Right, right. Of the methane coming out of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what it looks like to me. I wouldn't even know what to make of that. Like, and that's another point Randall makes in his lecture. He's like, people drive by these things all the time, and like all this evidence of, well, we'll get to that in a moment. But they drive by these things all the time and don't think twice about it. So all of the positions of the pyramids and the conical structures in this particular complex were expertly positioned and laid out, and many of the components from the old world are manifested in all of these earthworks that we see. And when we see old world, we're talking about like from like the Egyptian times, right?
Mm-hmm.
This looks pretty dope to me. This is the Earth Lodge Passage Mound.
Yeah, that looks awesome.
I'd like to go in that.
I wouldn't mind having my house like that. It'd probably be so cool inside. You'd probably sleep so good, literally being covered in earth.
Maybe, unless like you're in an area of the country that's prone to earthquakes, then I'd be like, fuck this, I wouldn't sleep too good. This is the aerial view of the Etowah Mounds in Cartersville, Georgia. So
They look like
Georgia.
pyramids from the top.
Right. Exactly. All right. Let me see if I can find my other note where this continues, because this is the end of this note. Yeah, here it is.
Looks like a skate park right there.
You would, you would, if this was all concrete, you would skate this and you would grind these rails and shit, right?
No, I would bust my ass so hard grinding those rails. I would roll around. That's it.
I wouldn't even attempt it. Fuck.
Yeah.
Because I can't skate at all.
I would roll around respectfully.
So this is the point where his associate is standing right here. I don't know if you can see him with it. It might be a little blurry, but you can see where his arms stretched out. That's the point of the midsummer sunrise. So once again, they're marking these astrological movements, an astrological phenomenon. There were probably posts that were set into the flat tops of the pyramids that marked the cosmic lines. And these were huge work. They required a massive amount of work to build. And the archaeologists believe that these structures, with the building materials they had around them at the time, they were built with baskets and deer antlers. And I mean, and just look, this is an artist depiction, but this is what Moundsville, Alabama looked like. Can you imagine the amount of work and time it would take to make something like that?
I mean, how many deer antlers are we talking about? Because you got to be one hell of a hunter to take your deer antlers. You know, how many of them do you have laying around? You use them on?
I mean, I don't know.
I mean, people mount their deer antlers in
you got to
wall.
figure though, probably back then when all this shit was built, there were a lot of deer. They weren't all like killed off from market hunting and shit. You know, like what happened later in North America. So the wildlife was probably a lot more abundant.
Or maybe they didn't use that many deer antlers. Maybe they just used them.
Oh, it's a tool, man. They probably use it to dig and shit like that. And it's not like you need. Anyway, this is a Emerald Mound. This is what it did look like. So it was a set of mounds on top of a giant mound.
Oh wait, did you mean they used deer antlers and baskets to dig, and they used the baskets to haul the dirt, and the antlers to dig?
He didn't specify in the lecture, but he talked about that those were the tools that were used.
So tools. Stupid.
I imagine they dug or did something. I don't know what the fuck they did with the deer antlers, but
I thought they were using it to build, like putting the baskets and the antlers in the monuments. Like, damn, how many antlers do they have? That's why I was wondering. Stupid.
No, bro. No. So you thought these things are made out of bone?
I was starting to wonder where they put the antlers, like in the corners as support pieces to like keep the dirt in.
Maybe I'm wrong and you're fucking right. I don't know.
I don't know. That's how I would build a mound. I would be using antlers.
What these things look like. This is Emerald Mound today, what's left of it, and it's a mound on top of a larger mound. This is all just dirt that's formed into these mounds.
This is just dirt.
It's just dirt, bro. There's no bone in this. Come on, man.
Actually,
giant. But dude, the point being, look at how huge this is. Look, this is next to like a fucking car right here. That's a lot of dirt.
It really is. I mean, it seems like a modern construction crew came in with tractors and built that thing up.
Exactly.
It's perfectly smooth. It's lasted all these years. Look at that, man.
Yeah. So why would they have Why would these ancient cultures spend so much time building these giant structures if
Well, I
it's
read
just it's
about
just I mean
this.
why would they do this? I don't know.
It's a burial ceremony and it's a religious thing.
You think these are all just for burial ceremonies?
Yeah, yes. Because
Okay.
most of them that they've excavated, they've found bones in them.
Hmm.
And see, I have some information on Mound 72 from Illinois.
Is
And
this it right here?
this is kind of one of the big ones because part of the Cahokia Indians. That I don't think that's it. That's Monk's Mound. It's part of the complex, but Mound 72 is a different one.
Do you have a picture of it that you want to show?
Yes, I have pictures.
All right. It's all yours.
Do you see that?
Yep.
So Mound 72 is this puppy right here. This is below the actual
You make
mound.
that bigger?
Yeah. And this is in Illinois, the Cahokia Indians. You see my
All
little
right.
pin?
So
Yeah.
yeah. So you have the equinox sunset, the equinox sunrise.
The summer sunrise is a big, see, sub 1, sub 2, and Mound 96 over here. But Mound 72 is like one big one that winds up, I think, from what I understand, over here. So the summer sunrise you just mentioned in that one, it's a big alignment point, the summer solstice sunrise. But this one is aligned 30 degrees off the east and west axis with the solstices. The other mounds are northeast, south and west.
Hmm.
So this is the only one that's aligned in that different type of way. And it wasn't one big mound at first. As they excavated it, they found, I'm screen sharing all my notes again and I'm forgetting what was what.
No, you
But
good.
it was one small mound, and in that mound they found a man with his feet. I will find him. I have this picture with his feet facing northwest, and he was on a bed of 20,000 shells. And the shells were shaped like,
So they found actual dead. They found like a body.
yeah, his
Okay.
skeleton, and he was on top of the shells, and the shells were shaped like a bird, a falcon.
Birdman.
Exactly, the Birdman burial is what they wound up calling it because this was a religious burial of a high figure, and this was a mound. And then they found the second mound, so that's the falcon. This is a recreation of it.
Right.
But the beginning of the mounds were internments or burials of elite personages oriented to the summer solstice. So they haven't excavated all these mounds. The only ones they have excavated, which is a lot of them, like in England, in the Salisbury Plain, in Worcestershire, and all these other places, they find bones. These are burial.
Ah. Well.
Yeah, and it's either it was a sacrifice or it's a temple where they do ceremonial rites, but it's all a religious burial ceremony.
So it
That
has multiple uses, kind of like what the
yeah,
pyramids, right? So how the pyramids were used as both a model of the earth to mark astrological things,
yeah,
and supposedly their burial sites as well. Once again, we have a lot of similarities between the old world Egypt and what was going on over here in North America, right?
yeah.
Am I wrong? Am I right in making those comparisons?
Yeah, it's like the similar thing happened in a different part of the world.
Because I mean, this particular mound structure you're talking about still marks astrological movements, like we were just talking about with the equinox, sun, and the summer sunrise and the winter sunrise. So
yeah, it's all astronomically aligned. And
what's
he was
this?
the Birdman was buried with things,
What the fuck
a
is that?
shitload of arrowheads from all over the Mississippi Valley, from like Wisconsin, Louisiana, West Tennessee, and even from the a tribe in Oklahoma, which implies a really strong trade route that was existing at this time. More arrowheads,
Hmm.
more arrowheads, and then I think in sub 1.
No, that's the one we just looked at.
Yeah. I
Oh.
want to show you this, but in a different mound, sub 2, I think is where they found.
So this was all buried, and they dug this up.
Yeah, well, there was an evolution. This mound was built, sub 2 was built, and then there came like sub 3.
I'm talking
And
about in
they
modern times. Like, how do we find all this shit?
excavating a lot of radar scans because they don't want to destroy the earth and the bones. So they're finding more lately with the technology of radar scan. That's why all this science is kind of blowing up now, because they have the technology to go in there and see without destroying it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna read. I'm just gonna read this so I don't fuck up
Okay.
the facts about this, because
Do it.
this is how this mound came to be in this whole religious ceremony. And I'm gonna try to go between my pictures too, but my computer's slow and I fucked up and downloaded malware.
Don't mean to laugh. Go ahead, bro.
Small mounds, burials of alleged leaders. 5 meters west, summer solstice post was buried with his feet facing northwest. So the summer solstice pulse here, 5 feet west, was him. And at the base of this was that post.
Oh, 5 meters west, not 5 feet.
Yes, thank you for correcting me. He was on 20,000 marine shells. Marine shell disc beads, whatever that is. Shape of a falcon. Now the falcon represents the upper world. You were talking about the comets earlier, representing the serpent representing comets.
Yeah.
Yes, but also the falcon represents the upper world.
What's the upper world?
Like the good, because there's the underworld, and the upper world in ancient.
Okay.
You know,
I'm
I don't.
guessing the upper world is in reference to like the gods, the heavens,
Yeah.
astrology, things like that.
I have the page saved.
Let's see.
And I thought this was interesting too, because one of the symbols of these ancients was the hand. Look right here, the hand and with the eyeball inside.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, like these ancient symbols that we see nowadays, even in pop culture propaganda, and people don't even know. It's a motive in the Mississippian symbolism, maybe related to suggesting it represents a portal to the other world. Here's Birdman with a rattle made of human skulls. Falcon is one of their it's an avatar for a warrior. Yeah, so these were prominent figures that were buried and consecrated in interment in these mounds, which is why these mounds exist. Great serpent. Yeah, look at this. The dragon and the serpent represents, what's it say here? The underworld. Great serpents, underworld. Birdman or falcon beings represent the upper world. Yeah, so just the fact that these mounds are religious ceremonies. There's the whole Mississippian area in the southeast of America. I never realized there was so much super badass history.
Right here where we grew up.
Yeah, exactly, because it's just flat and boring, and everybody wants to be in New York or something.
Right. Or California.
Yeah, and they got these swastikas too. I was noticing this. Well, the plus sign that crossed, this little thing here.
Oh no, yeah, it says swastika.
Right. Right here, the 4 cardinal points. Like this is the same symbology you see from the Assyrian and Mesopotamia stuff, and this is in America and for the Native Americans. It's like this global religion. This one common idea at one point. Anyway.
That was maybe brought, you know, maybe brought down from some super ancient culture.
See, look, that internet pop up right there from the malware.
Oh shit, I saw it.
Yeah, so below Birdman was another man buried face down. This was known as the Birdman burial. With this original Birdman were found lots of things. We talked about that. So Mound 72 sub 2 was built over the remains of an old house that's right here with 2 dead people in it with other bundled burials. Like these people would bury themselves together. So I'll get to that, dude. It's going to blow your mind what the
fuck? So they buried the house and the people in it?
I couldn't understand, but they were interred together. What I read implied that the people already there in the house were waiting for the other people so they could inter themselves together. So it's like they died together and then built that mound. Then a pit was dug and some goods were buried. Then another pit was dug on the southeast corner, northeast, southeast, somewhere here, and 24 women were mass buried in it. Then more lay like dirt was filled over it, and it was extended southeast toward Mound Sub 1. So then you get this, yeah, so in that area towards Sub 1. The next construction was a platform near the southeast ramp where 4 boys were interlocked and buried. The 4 dudes right here, dude. The 4 dudes. That's their skulls, where their heads and wrists were cut off. Yeah.
So they think that was a sacrifice.
Yeah, and there's multiple additions to the mound. It's not like a fixed thing. They would continue to dig and add more people and then reconstruct the mound until eventually it is what it is today, one large truncated mound called Mound 72. But it started as these 2 mounds and Mound 76. We get to that picture. And this is in Ohio. This is just one mound of all the ones around the world. It started as these 2 and this one over here. This is still over there, but these 2 eventually become one big one.
So what was that monk's mound I just had up that was in the same compound? Where's that at?
I don't think it's here. It's at a different part in Illinois from the same Cahokia Indians. This is specifically a Mound 72 deep dive, if you will.
I got you.
Yeah. So 4 boys were interlocked and buried, missing their hands and skulls. Some researchers think they could represent the 4 cardinal points, northeast, south, and west. Next to these men was a pit excavated to bury 53 women, ranging 15 to 30. So that big bread. Yeah, that big.
It looks like a piece of bread.
Yeah, it looks like what you'd put like the perfect little bread Tupperware. It's shaped like a sandwich. That's what it looks like. It's crazy. Exactly. So 53 women, 15 to 30, based on dental records that showed they ate more maize than animal proteins, so they weren't of the same social class or culture, perhaps were immigrants to the Cahokian area. Some of these women show signs of strangulation before the burial.
That's fucked up.
Yeah, this was extended further towards Sub 1, now the whole thing being called Sub 3, so it all became one after those burials. Southwest of these was then excavated an even larger pit and the most gruesome of the mass burial sites uncovered here. 39 men and women were found, and some of them were partially decapitated. I think this is part of it. I didn't have a picture of those actual ones, but these were part of a litter burial where they put them on top of cedar or something like that.
What
So they
the
like
hell?
their skeleton embeds into the cloth or something. So I think these are the 39 men and women. I think I don't know, but this is the only picture that adds up what I found. Yeah, and there were incomplete decapitations, evidence of violent death, broken jaws, and evidence of being buried alive because when they dug this pit, they covered it in white sand and then just threw everybody they killed down in there, and then they filled it in with white sand. So um, the people that were in there alive were trying to dig out when they died. So they assumed people were buried alive because their fingers were facing upwards in a digging out position when they were. So there were some people that were just dead and all broken from just being, terribly killed, and people that were just died in an upward position. So they
Bro,
think
that's
that,
fucking horrifying.
yeah, fingers facing upward, climb out of the sand, buried alive, perhaps, blah, blah, blah. Oh, they could have been soldiers in a lost war or a rebellion. Some researchers thinking a rebellion against the previous women who had been slaughtered.
272 people.
Yeah, 272 people total are in sub 3, which is now mound 72, and that's just one mound. Remember, every mound they've ever excavated, they've found bones. There's been some excavations that have happened where they've written these things off, but they weren't full excavations by like half-assed people that, didn't really care. I'm paraphrasing what I remember, but the idea is that anytime they've ever actually gotten to excavate, they found bones, and it's always the same. So these were religious burial sites for the
Jesus.
ancients. Yeah, and they built mounds because they didn't have pyramid technology or the know-how. They think it turned into mounds because later, as they get further away from antiquity, the understanding of how to do those old construction jobs was kind of lost. But they were still trying to implement the same concepts.
Damn.
Yeah. So some researchers believe it could be a lineage of prominent figures and families buried here, along with sacrifices and retainers like other people. So I'm not to the crazy mind-blowing stuff yet. So sacrificial victims due to the signs of death and ritual execution, the methods of burials, and other factors. So this is all looking to researchers and scientists like just religious execution, sacrificial victims, all this. So one of the best examples is the death of Tattooed Serpent in 1725. He was a Natchez war chief and the younger brother of the Natchez chief. I wonder if that's like the Natchitoches in Louisiana. Natchez, that's a big thing, Yeah, the Natchez chief, great son. Dude, this is so messed up. So great Tattooed Serpent died in 1725, so they commemorated him, right?
Okay.
They
Right.
commemorated him, right? So his brother, the chief, his two wives, one of his sisters, his doctor, his first warrior, his head servant, the servant's wife, all chose to be interred with Tattooed Serpent.
So both is, oh my God.
All those people said, we're going to go down with him and we'll be commemorated and buried together. That's what these mounds are for these people.
Bro, can you
I
imagine
don't
how
mean
bad life must have sucked back then for you to be like, you know what, fuck it. You know what? Tattooed Serpent's gone. You must bury me with him.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like
What?
maybe it was
Fuck.
awesome because they lived in the, I don't know, higher plane of consciousness
Maybe so.
about the afterlife. So it was
You're
probably
right.
just like, I don't
I
know.
could get there quicker. Maybe they're
Yeah.
just tripping on DMT all the time. You're like, I just want to live in that realm.
Look, I'm about to tell you what they were tripping on when they did this stuff. So
So they were
several
tripping. Knew it.
several old women and an infant that was strangled by his parents were interred with Tattooed Serpent also. So it's almost like there were a couple instances from the village where they were like, all right, let's throw these in there too and take care of our village because these old women got nothing left and that kid got,
Ugh, I can't. Ugh.
it's crazy. So such a sacrifice was a great honor. It put you in high esteem. After the ceremony for Tattooed Serpent, let me make sure I don't have any pictures on this. I don't think that I do.
Oh man, I can't get down. They fucking strangled an infant.
Yeah, there's no pictures on this. It's just the story. So after the ceremony for Tattooed Serpent, everyone else and the retainers, the old women and the babies that were just in there too, would be painted with red paint and dressed in their finest garments, then drugged with large doses of nicotine and ritually strangled.
Nicotine?
Yeah.
What does large doses of nicotine do to you?
Makes you feel super good.
I guess so. It's like smoking a pack of cigarettes, I guess.
Dude, go
I
get a
don't feel
nice
good after
cigar.
that.
Go get a nice cigar and take one breath of it, and it will fucking put you on your ass. It is awesome.
See, I haven't ever really done that with a nice cigar.
Well, I mean, you used to smoke cigarettes, but you know that high you got the first time where it just, I mean,
Just the very
cigarettes,
first time, and then you're chasing it every time after that.
yeah, but I guess if you're a Native American and everything's a ritual ceremony, you don't do it all day, or maybe you do. And they're probably chewing on fresh plants, you know what I'm saying? They're probably getting they're probably mortar and pestle and nicotine.
I was just hoping for some more psychedelic type shit they were being drugged with. Make it more interesting.
Maybe so, man. So tattooed serpent. I want to get. I started smoking those cigars because I just like nicotine, but I stopped because it's like I get dehydrated and it's
Yeah.
But I'm thinking about getting some nicotine gum because nicotine itself is actually good for you. It does stuff with, it does stuff good for your brain. It's just the means you get it might be bad, but anyway.
Sorry for the tangent.
Yeah, so Tattooed Serpent was buried in a trench in the temple floor, and the retainer were buried in other spots around the mound, or mount, if you can't spell. After some time, the bodies were disinterred, dude. They were taken out, their defleshed bones bundled together and stored in the temples as bundle burials. So that's where these different types of mounds come in, because some of them are just big sacrificial burial pits, and other ones, the pyramid and conical shaped ones that come out of certain areas and eras of the like 1000 BCE to 1150 CE. It's like a couple of tribes that were doing the conical pyramid ones, and those were for like that bundled burials where it was just to commemorate and ritually. So, you know, they had different purposes for them. But an interesting next thing is that in Beowulf, it relates that a barrow was built on the cliff that was high, and a barrow is another name for a mound, as well as tumulus or tumuli. And in our song, I use that lyric tumulus, tumultuous tumulus. So you'll have to go listen to our record if you want to know what I'm talking about. Was built on the cliff that was. This is from Beowulf. A barrow was built on the cliff that was high abroad by wayfarers widely seen. So from this perspective, the barrow would look like a point in the night sky from below, like points against the sky. And that's why they built them on the ridge. Theory is why they built them on the ridges, but one of them was so that seafarers can see, or you can map the stars and their points. So, some of them were built on ridges that from below in the river, you couldn't see travelers passing by strategically. So like concealed travelers. I don't know why, but there's all these things about the mounds. But Alfred Watkins, the guy that wrote, let me get that book, because he's the guy, the Old Straight Track. Can you see that? I don't know. Can't see that. No. By Alfred Watkins. And he's the one in England who noticed that what we talked about last week with Old Sarum, which I have a better picture of Old Sarum than we did last week. It's a huge hill fort, a big mound, dude. These are ancient mounds. It's big mounds that were after the Neolithic Age turned into defensive war forts for the Bronze Ages. In England.
That picture from Wikipedia, look at that one, like right next to that.
This one?
Yeah. The city like built into it.
I wonder if that's just the artist rendering.
I know. That's what I was wondering.
Yeah.
Because today it's all greenery right there.
Yeah. But in England, they were turned into war forts. The ones in America were never turned into anything. That's just, I guess, the difference. But that's Old Sarum, and from Old Sarum radiates out
so cool
ley lines throughout. But So fucking the ley line, what it actually is according to Alfred Watkins, originally the ley line discovered by him was he was looking through over England, and you could see like so many miles, 60 kilometers or 25 miles or something, and he could see all these mounds and monuments that he knows are there, and they all lined up. And that's what a ley line is just the actual lining up of all these monuments that are already there. So going back to, I guess, last week's pictures, you can see from Old Sarum.
Yeah, so that's where he tracked all that
Right
shit
here.
out at.
Yeah, well, he tracked all his stuff out at the Worcestershire, some other place. This is a separate plane.
But this would be someone doing similarly at Old Sarum.
Yeah, and Alfred Watkins said that instead of mapping across the continent with these long lines that some people do, this was in like 1890 or something, so they've been talking about this for a while, because some of those monuments will be off by up to a mile. He said you get the best results and a more accurate representation of what these are, period. Not going across continent, but sticking to these regional areas like this. So Old Sarum, Stonehenge, there's all these earthworks, but there's cathedrals, castles, mounds.
All built along those ley lines.
Yeah, all these things are found in perfect alignment with each other all over England in these regional vicinities. That's what ley lines are, according to Alfred Watkins, the founder of them.
Well, that makes a lot more sense than what we were talking about last week.
Yeah, because there's still an intention behind the building of it and the astronomical alignments. But I think that from what I was reading, I don't know if ley lines are electromagnetic, but there is, separate from him, I'll get to that in a second, but the magnetic woo-woo stuff comes from Diane Fortune, which we talked about on the occultic episode, who is the spirit behind the modern satanic movement, and Aleister Crowley actually made the spells and put it into practice. So the woo-woo stuff with ley lines and all of this comes from Diane Fortune and the twisted Aleister Fortune. Yeah, and at that time, this stuff was popular from the research coming from Alfred Watkins from England. So that's how all that stuff kind of got twisted into the modern era. But in the Iliad, another interesting thing right here, book 23 gives instructions on the burning of the body of Patroclus and the gathering of his bones afterward. This is the Iliad, super ancient Greek, I guess. So let these between a double layer of fat enclosed and in a golden urn remain till I myself shall in the tomb be laid, and over them build a mound, not too large, but of proportions meet. In days to come, ye Greeks, who after me shall here remain, complete the work and build it broad and high. So it's just like the evolution we talked about with Mound 72, because below the mound is this. Below the mound is an astronomical wood hinge, actual wooden post and stone posts, actual sites, because we talked about the wood hinge last, but wood hinge is the actual common thing, and they build it with timber posts that are like a meter in diameter or something like that. So it's the
and this is all the way across the fucking world too.
Yeah, so what comes first? What comes first is the wood hinge monument, and then comes the mound. So underneath the mounds are, from what I understand, actual buried wood hinges or stone hinges that if you scan, posts. And that's obviously
and that's confirmed.
Yeah, that's consistent.
Like they've found that with LiDAR and all this other stuff.
That's what I'm trying to get at. I think so. That's what it seems like, is that below the mounds there's a monument. What is this? Post-fit features, middens, excavation limits. I think this is just aerial of Mound 72 complex, all the burials.
Yeah. It's a giant complex.
And this is the actual mound. Kind of a dirt thing. Not much.
Yeah, it doesn't look impressive whenever you just see it
Yeah, it doesn't.
in person like that, but it's what's underneath it and what it was.
Yeah, but that fits what he's talking about in Greek right here. Build it to proportion. Enclose a gird. Let these between a double layer of fat enclosed and a golden urn remain till I shall be in the tomb. So he's like buried in a tomb in a mound.
Yeah.
And then he says, in days to come, Greeks, who after me you'll be here, complete the work and build it broad and high. So he's implying continue building onto this mound, which is what they did with
And it's
Mound
crazy that
72.
these Indian cultures did this, or these whatever cultures, maybe not Indian, not the correct, but these different cultures did this, and they're all the way across the world. So it's not
Yeah.
like they had the internet where the Greeks were sharing that part of their culture with each other, you know?
Yeah. It's strange because the Greeks had a lot of stuff that came before them. You know, like the Greek myths are ancient Mesopotamian myths, just with different names.
Right.
Like Osiris and Isis, and their story is now I mix it up, but I think it's like Zeus and Hercules and Athena and stuff. So the Greeks just kind of reinvented what was already there. And you've got Solon that went to the Egyptian priesthood and got the story of Atlantis and brought it to Greek. And then from Greek came at the Atlantis thing, and it wound up being in all the Disney movies, and now everyone thinks it's horse shit. So again, from some Greek literature, the Iliad and the Odyssey, which covers a lot of this weird stuff. I overlooked that book my whole life, but there's a lot of weird stuff in there. They're talking
I
about
have too.
It's like another preservation through Greek literature of ancient practices, like Solon, Plato, and the Timaeus, and the story of Atlantis. And now you got Iliad giving a little shout out to Mounds. You know, there's a lot of weird preservation and reinvention of ancient truths in the Greek. But frick, man. Sorry, I'm getting used to my flow here. So I did look into the electromagnetic side of the ley lines because, according to Alfred Watkins, you can stand on a hilltop looking 60 miles away at another mound clear in view and looking down the site, see all other mounds in perfect alignment. Yeah. But the electromagnetic thing comes from Ivan Sanderson in like the 1890s or something. And it was the planetary grid that he called Vile Vortices. And it was a theory that was shot down by people, but it stuck on. And that's how ley lines, I think, get conflated with the electromagnetic things, because it's actually Ivan Sanderson's theory of Vile Vortexes, which there's 12 major points. Oh, sorry, that's the wrong one. 12 major points globally of high electromagnetic activity. And they all connect. This is the best grid. I haven't actually found the NASA scan showing the electromagnetic radiating out of the Earth, but this is the idea, at least behind this, is that there's these 12 points. 1 and 2 are North and South Pole, and then you've got 10 in between. 5 are in the Tropic of Cancer, 5 are in the Tropic of Capricorn. And there's another graphic overlay that shows that it's interesting. This is actually a pentagram upside down. They connect, and this is a pentagram. So they're in this sacred geometrical. If this is actually what it,
What's that place in Africa?
Well, I'm going to get there because there's 12 places. That's a great question. Great segue. So one is the Bermuda Triangle. I think that place in Africa is the Algerian megalith, which it was hard to find someone, but I think I found it's a pyramid complex. But one of the major points, Vile Vortex, is obviously
Vortices.
the Bermuda Triangle. I didn't get a picture of that because we all know about the Bermuda
Right.
Triangle. Number 2 is the Algerian megalith, which it's not anything specific, but it's south of Timbuktu, and I read something about it. And this is just at least an example of one of the ancient megalithic ruins in the area, at least. But I think this is actually
Is that still
the
there
one.
today?
Yeah, this is a pyramid complex, Algeria, Diop, D-I-O-P, Diops.
This looks fucking wild, dude. Look at
Yeah,
that.
and this pyramid
I
here,
don't know why I haven't heard of this before, this type of stuff before.
yeah, and Diop sounds like Cheop, C-H-E-O-P, which is the alleged builder of the Great Pyramid, and I don't think it is, but Diop is consistent with the.
When are these dated from?
Shit, good question.
It's called the Ruins of Merope. I'm gonna find out.
My computer might
going.
freeze if I try, but yeah, that's. So in this area, that's that African area. There's another major Vile Vortex. And this is where all the weird stuff happens. UFOs, sightings, blah, blah, blah. You got the Indu Valley in Mohenjo-Daro, Pakistan, which is just an ancient megalith of sorts. Major.
Hold on, let me get back to you. Holy shit. Sorry. I was doing that search for that other thing.
Oh yeah, let me slow down and let you do that.
No,
I'm gonna grab some coffee.
All right, I'm back.
Okay, so I just have this stuff, the 12 points, and then you can get on with the other stuff because I know you got that organized well.
It's just Randall Carlson's structure. It's all good. I mean,
so what did you find something on the Mohenjo-Daro?
No, I was just trying to get the date of it. I found like this article from the Atlantic. Oh, okay, here we go. It now was built between 2,700 and 2,300 years ago. Okay, so it's not super ancient, but so this article says. But it looks amazing. They have some really great pictures in this article.
There's also number 4, the Hamkulia volcano east of Hawaii is a strong point.
Okay.
Now, obviously, you could deep dive more and find like all the events that happened around here.
12 points that he's highlighting. So what happens at these 12 points?
It's a high electromagnetic point, energy point, and they all connect the Earth in a grid. It's called the global grid or something like that.
So how did he measure this?
I don't think he did.
So he just kind of guessed. Said, "Hey, I feel like this is a spot with a lot of electromagnetic energy."
Oh, you mean like how did he come up with this
theory? How did
he
come up with it? Yeah.
Okay, that's a good. I don't know why I didn't even think to. What's this mother effer's name?
I don't know.
Ivan Sanderson.
Yeah, there you go.
He sounds like a basketball player. Vile Vortices. Supposed to be anomalic regions.
Okay, that's cool, but how did you figure that out, bro?
Yeah, I don't know. I was just trying to bring in why.
No, and I get it.
Some people think it's electromagnetism or ley lines, and I don't know if they're the same thing or if these ley lines are on this grid. So what I want to do is actually read his book and read books on this, because kind of scurrying around articles, you don't get the juice of it. But just to try to clarify the difference between ley lines and the electromagnetic grid people are talking about. Ley lines is Alfred Watkins. It's actual line between monuments. And the electromagnetic thing is Ivan Sanderson's theory on this grid. Which, if you put a gun to my head, I would say there is a grid. Why would there not be? There's so much electromagnetic activity. Animal
Well,
treasure,
I didn't mean to get you derailed with that question. I was just wondering, thinking out loud.
cryptozoology, and paranormal. Vile Vortices. Sanders has been described as credulous for suggesting that aircraft and boats went missing at Devil Sea because of a wrinkle in space-time, gravitational or magnetic aberrations, extraterrestrials, or mysterious underwater people. Fabricated, nothing more than an exaggeration, the Devil Sea stories, based on loss of several fishing boats over 5 years. Yeah, because there's rogue waves in those areas like Bermuda Triangle. They're just big waves, so big they could actually pull planes out of the sky if they're flying low enough during a storm with low visibility. That's why they think planes go missing in the Bermuda Triangle, which makes sense to me.
Damn, that's wild.
Yeah, so I don't think he has any measurements. He just introduced the concept.
Okay, concept. Okay, I was just wondering. Sorry.
Yeah. So
My apologies. I'll shut up.
number 5 is Devil's Sea, south of Japan, where one of these points is. I have this picture. See, number 6 is the really interesting one, the South Atlantic anomaly. Just the map of the sea south of Japan. All these islands.
Excuse me.
See, the South Atlantic anomaly would be the most documented, I guess, of what you're talking about with this grid, because on this grid that Ivan is talking about lies what at least we know for a fact is the South Atlantic anomaly right here. See, this is the Van Allen radiation belt. And then right here, it's like, let me read it so I don't mess it up, because so the Pamela, all caps experiment showed positrons at a higher magnitude than expected in this area, 200 kilometers above the Earth's surface. And a positron are antimatter counterparts of the electron. So it's basically antimatter, a void of space. And it's happening right here, and they know this. They measure it. Yeah, so if they collide, you get annihilation where it just cancels each other out. So NASA reported that modern laptops crashed when space shuttle flights passed through this area. The SAA, the South Atlantic Anomaly, is believed to have destroyed Japan's most powerful X-ray observatory called the Hitomi. The SAA transiently disabled, which just means the radio waves and communication signals, disabled the direction finding mechanism, which caused the satellites to rely on its gyroscopes, which were not working properly, and it spun itself apart. Happened in this area. In October 2012, CRS-1 Dragon spacecraft, which was attached to the International Space Station, experienced transient problems in this area as it passed through. So just this area.
Seems like a lot of, like you said, electromagnetic energy.
Yeah, and let me look that up on Wikipedia, because what's actually happening there is a little confusing. It's like in reverse proportional relationship or something, inversely proportional.
Yeah.
Like there's the least amount of electromagnetic atmosphere, therefore the most amount of positron activity. Something like that.
Okay.
It's all a result of the lack of atmosphere, but that is also on one of these 12 points, supposedly. Supposedly one of these points. It's there where the point is, but the point is alleged. Earth's inner Van Allen radiation belt comes closest to the Earth's surface, dipping down to an altitude of 200 kilometers. This leads to an increased flux of energetic particles in this region and exposes. Okay, so it's the lowest spot
of the Van Allen,
but closest spot to the Earth. Yeah.
And which is 120 miles above the Earth.
And obviously that's where I got this picture.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
I had no idea. So that's pretty cool. I learned.
Yeah, so if someone's talking shit on Ivan Sanderson, you can be like, well, there's this one point where this stuff does happen. And they'll be like, oh, facts. Oh, facts. And you'll be like, hey, it's a conspiracy. And then there's number 7, the Wharton Basin, which is just some place west of Australia. But it's actually, see, this is another point. where some weird stuff is actually happening because the movement of the Indian Ocean floor. I don't know what a fracture zone is. I guess it's where, like, stuff fractures a lot. But there's tectonic plate movement. The plates from Australia and the Indian Ocean meet here.
Probably talking about the fractures in the tectonic plates.
Yeah, they meet right here, and there's a lot of activity as far as, and electromagnetism, they know affects tectonic plate activity. That's why global warming, a lot of people think that it's just the solar cycle, because when you increase the electromagnetic activity, you increase the Earth's activity. So you get tectonic plate movements, you get increased volcano activity, you get like a changing of climate where water starts flowing and ice caps start melting. So solar cycle affects all this stuff when you're talking about electromagnetism.
Right.
There's the Easter Island megaliths, which we all know what that looks like, but I got a beautiful picture right here. Now, they just realized with radar scans that, and obviously, these are full statues that are buried in the ground. They're not
makes
just,
sense.
Yeah, they're not just like cut off right here.
Yeah.
These are full fucking statues, and they find more of these at Göbekli Tepe, which is something else we should dig into. But Göbekli Tepe has like a shitload of statues like this where they're just all just buried. So this is another thing that happens around the world, these big statues.
It's wild.
But Easter Island is on one of these supposed points. So there really is, and that's why they get conflated with ley lines, because these monuments are lining up with this electromagnetic grid supposedly.
Yeah.
Makes
sense.
So east of Rio de Janeiro, I don't have a picture of that because I don't know what that is, but whatever. The Loyalty Islands, which
fuck is that?
It's like off of France or something. Caledonia, France. Just
beautiful.
Yeah. Super beautiful.
Let's go
I would
there.
totally pee in that water, dude. I would pee in that water. The North and South Pole.
Which would make sense.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean that's it on that. That's what the ley lines and the magnetism and the mounds and all that is.
Dope.
And giant bones, because these mounds.
That answered the question I asked earlier of why did these ancient civilizations build these mounds? Well, now we know. Thank you, Dylan.
Yeah, because they love nicotine.
Nicotine.
They love nicotine and choking people. So they said, we got to justify this. And they sent their crew to line stuff up with the stars, and they started killing bitches and burying them. And they were like, no, it's a ceremony.
They were like, okay, so hard all the time. They just wanted to live in that world, so they volunteered death.
Yep.
Cool. Got it. We've solved the mystery of the ancient civilizations.
Podcast over. Yep. No more episodes. We did it.
Yep, we're done.
Actually, I'm done. You got more stuff. I'm looking forward to this.
What? You want me to share my screen again?
Yeah.
All right. I'm about to start kind of rolling because I do have a hard stop today.
Okay.
That's a conference call. So
yeah, me too. I got to go record Joe doing guitars. I got to leave here at like in an hour. So
exactly. Perfect. So we got the same cutoff time.
All right.
So we left off with the Monk's Mound, which we know the Cahokia Indians built, and we know why Cahokia Indians built their mounds. So there are probably dead bodies in this motherfucker. But also, you'll notice that there are similarities between these structures and the Teotihuacan city in south of Mexico City. There's a lot of parallels between them, but the main difference is that of building materials. So the Aztecs had limestone to build with, whereas all these woodland groups, they didn't have that kind of stone available to them. So they built these earthworks out of what was available to them, which was basically dirt and timber. So that's why they haven't been as durable. That's why a lot of these things are like in pretty bad ruin. To the extent that they still exist, we can see the geometry and the architecture is similar. So if you look at this, and here's some images from, how do you say that word, Dylan?
Teotihuacan.
Teotihuacan.
Teotihuacan. I don't know. Teotihuacan.
So it looks
Teotihuacan.
like here we have those truncated looking pyramids, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Monk's Mound. I mean, a bunch of pyramid type structures. So when you stand on top of these things, you begin to realize what their purpose is. You get a clear view of the heavens. So this is on
Yeah.
one of those mountains. You get a clear view of the heavens that you can study.
Creates a
And
horizon. Like if you're
yeah,
a sky watcher, it creates a horizon to see.
so the closest system of cosmic measurement that we can use to our human eye is the horizon system. And to use the horizon system, you need an unobstructed view of the horizon where you can stand and see certain objects rise over the course of, say, a year. And you could track its movement over the course of that year. So this is an example of what it would look like standing on the top of one of those mounds and how you would be able to track all these different conditions as they moved. So, and then we have structures like this that were built, Poverty Point in good old Louisiana, which I think is up in northeast Louisiana. And they think that the estimates of Poverty Point were that the original volume of the complex was 12 to 15 times the volume of stone in Cheops Pyramid, which
Oh.
12 to 15 times. Now, this is not, that doesn't mean there's 12 to 15 times stone, because remember, they did not have stone to build the structure out of, but the volume of the complex is 12 to 15 times larger than that of,
Dude,
of
to
Cheops,
put
which
to
is
put
fucking crazy. Look at these people standing next to this pyramid.
12 to 15 times, dude. Damn. Dude, to put that in perspective, the building of the pyramid complex. So there was like multiple kingdoms where pyramids were being built over the course of 5 or 6,000 years, plus or minus, but it's a big period. Like 60% or I think 80% of all of the building happened in this time frame when they built the pyramids. And Poverty Point exceeded that by 12 to 15 times. That's how insane Poverty Point is.
I mean, actually, Poverty Point is like, if you look at the dates on that, what years was that after or before the pyramids of Cheops?
2450 BC. That's after. Yeah, it's like 500 years after.
So, and okay, so I made this point earlier, right? So at the same time they were building the Sumerian ziggurats, the pyramids in the Giza Plateau, Stonehenge, they were also building this.
Dude.
All around the same time. These things look impressive too.
With baskets and deer antlers, I guess.
Yeah. And here we go. All of these structures being built around in this time frame here.
Near the dawn of the age of Aries.
Yep.
Bruh.
So there's probably a connection there. And it probably ties to the last global catastrophe. Let's start picking up the pace here. All right, so these are just some art depictions. So this one right here was built on a grid. Let me get my notes. Built on a grid of squares 760 feet by 760 feet, which is the size of the pyramid of Cheops. So think about that for scale when you look at this. I mean, these were fucking huge earthworks. And water was always present around these. So this was Kingston Springs, which is, I don't know where it's at in Tennessee. Around 1200 AD.
Birdman had some arrowheads from Tennessee.
This is the Winterville complex in Greenville, Mississippi.
Bruh.
They were huge complexes with perfect circles and immaculate geometry.
Dude, you know what this looks like?
What does it look like?
It looks like one of those places. It's not the Parthenon. It's the Luxor, Luxor, in Greece or something. It looks just like that, like a big skeleton with the head offset. The structure of that earthwork right there. I wonder if there's a connection. Temple de Luxor. It looks exactly like Temple de Luxor. The aerial view.
That?
The aerial view of it. It's a long complex. I could be mixing it up also, but there is a complex in Greece, and I think it's the Luxor Temple aerial view.
This is in Egypt, so.
Yeah, Egypt, whatever. Yeah, that's the body on the far end. I think that's the shoulders closer to you, and then you see how that trail comes out at the bottom of the pic? Yeah, right there, and then that big circle. It's just a similar layout. It just reminded me of that
I
layout
got you.
because
Yeah.
they think that Luxor Temple is like an effigy of a big human body because it's all in proportion, like walking through a human body, and it's all dedicated ritualistically and stuff.
I mean, it kind
But
of
then,
looks like a human body from this perspective right here.
yeah, and that go back. I'll let you continue, but just that earthwork looks just like that layout. But anyway, go ahead.
So, yeah, you're good, man. Let me minimize this. So one thing that there's a whole series of giant squares and circles, but most of these squares have they all have an area of 27 acres.
Which is 108, 10,080 feet.
Um,
27 acres square,
yeah,
27
that's
square the
right.
square.
So the circles with squares with 27 acres, 1,080 feet sides. Yep.
Mm.
So yeah, the Squire and Davis, where we get all these depictions from, are they did these before they went and destroyed all these fucking earthworks. Squire and Davis went and surveyed these things in around 1840 to 1850, and they kept noticing the repetition of those 27 acres. 10,080 on all four sides was 4 times 10,080, 43,200. Where have we seen that before? Seconds. Hemisphere at the equinox, 432,000 miles. For the solar radius, 432,000 years. In the Kali Yuga, 432,000 years of the Sumerian king list. So one of our sacred numbers. So yeah, I would say that these ancient civilizations were using a shared system for these things. 43,200 seconds of light on the spring equinox and 43,200 seconds of dark. So what we find is this number 1080 and 4320 are presented redundantly through these ancient structures that they were surveying. And then note the diameter of the circle here, which you can't see, but it is 1080. I'm sorry, 1,056, excuse me.
Did you get to Circleville, Ohio yet?
This is in Pike County, Ohio. Oh, here we go. Circleville, Ohio works.
Yeah, just saw that interesting note about 1,056 feet across. Stonehenge is 105.6 feet and would exactly fit across the ridge of Circleville 10 times. So it's different measurements, but the same gosh darn proportions.
Here we go.
On a different side of the world at a different epoch of time or whatever.
Could it be that they were using the same system? They were at least accessing the same canon of sacred geometry. So no one in America back then was using the British mile here in the Americas. And so that's what's so weird about that 105, that 1056 or 105.6. There's been some form of the universal system usage in the ancient world. They had access to some universal system or of some source outside of their own culture. So he suggests that the source goes back into deep time, into the realm of mythical history, which means we're going back to the Pleistocene age. These histories have only come to us in a form of myth, legend, or stories. When we talk about Plato and Atlantis, those numbers are embedded in Atlantis. So Plato gave us the date of the sinking of Atlantis as 9,000 years after Solon did his 10-year exile. So Solon did a 10-year exile to Egypt, and it was Solon that brought back the tale of Atlantis and presented it to the Greeks. Solon basically made that journey around 600 BC. So if you add the, resize this. So if you add the 9,000 years to the 600 years, you get a date of 11,600 years ago for the sinking of Atlantis. Now, the reason this is interesting is because it aligns with what geologists independently find various catastrophes that fall within that date range. Some of the earliest skeletal remains that have been found date all the way back to 150,000 years ago, or 144,000 years before present.
Preach.
So these skeletons are basically indistinguishable from those that of modern human skeletal remains, which suggests that. Go ahead.
We talked in the last episode about the time Michael Shermer, the science skeptic, came out recently and publicly apologized to Graham Hancock and, in effect, Randall Carlson as well, because they were together in that interview, and said, I didn't give you a fair shake because science is proving this, that 12,600 years ago or whatever, that what ended the Ice Age was a global cataclysm.
Yeah. So, and it sucks that this lecture was so long ago, because Randall could have included this new science that Michael Shermer is apologizing about in this lecture.
Yeah. So all of these theories that people have brushed off for so long, science is just, as it comes out, substantiates those claims.
Yes.
I can't talk today. I feel like I'm stupid, but it substantiates those claims. It substantiates the claims, which is wild to think that those theories, as science comes out, should fall apart and be less credible over time. But the reality is, like, if you're at a war table and you're looking at the possibilities, and they're all out there, of how history went, the possibility of Atlantis and all these wild things, it's just getting bigger on the table of possibilities. It should be getting small, but it's not. It's like, it's getting bigger, and then other stuff is falling off. And that, to me, is really, really trippy. That this stuff is just getting more true and true. It's not the other way.
Right. Like you would usually come up with a hypothesis, and then you disprove the hypothesis as you go along.
Yeah, it seems like as time goes on, Atlantis would be proven wrong by now, but it's not. It's like it just keeps.
Right.
It's not going away.
So if those skeletons are basically indistinguishable from modern humans, we could suggest that those humanoids would have had intelligence equivalent to that of modern humans 144,000 years before present. So you see this little red bar right here? That is all of recorded human history. Now look at the span of time between the earliest modern human skeletal remains and all of recorded human history, which started with, we could have said it started with the cuneiform writing from the flood tablet we found in the Epic of Gilgamesh, circa 3500 BCE. So it turns out that if it turns out that there are modern humans living in that span of time, why is there no recorded history? So then he maps this out. All these events basically are he went through time and he looked at, of all these events,
I researched some of these.
Which ones could have ended human civilization, right? He used a certain criteria for these events. He studied the record of geological changes, climate changes, weather changes, and judged them for the criteria of its magnitude that could end civilization. And the events he has on here aren't necessarily complete. So at least 16 times in the past 150,000 years, there's been either a climate change event, an environmental event, or a geological catastrophe powerful enough to where, if it were to occur today, it would put us all the way back into the Stone Age. So if we think about some of the catastrophes we've seen over the course of our lives, if you think about New Orleans, which at the time of his lecture, when was this lecture recorded?
1964. I think it's 1964.
All right, motherfucker. Katrina was what, 2005 or
So,
04? It was like
yeah.
05. This lecture was like 2011 or something like that. But
Mm.
in that time frame, New Orleans still hadn't really fully recovered, and arguably it still hasn't, right, here in 2020. So imagine an event that could cause the decimation of 100 major urban areas. Could we recover from that?
It would take a
Maybe.
long time.
Take a long time. Now think of three orders of magnitude of that. 1,000 cities, you know. So I don't know. It would be very difficult for us to recover from that. So he highlights this one right here, 26,000 BP, which is the onset of the late Wisconsin Ice Age. And remember the great year?
25,920.
Yep. So
you're going to come up to a slide soon where it has all these events pegged out over that picture. And I have just some, I just researched what some of those events were just to give specifics on what happened actually, because it's the Otter event, the Heinrich event, stuff like that. So carry on.
Yeah. So 12,900 BP, we had the start of the Younger Dryas global climate catastrophe. The green dots on here are basically derived from the model of the Great Year based upon cycles. 6,480, 12,960, and 25,920. So that's basically what the months of the season, the months and seasons in a full year, right, of the Great Year. Here he maps it out. He maps it out on the Great Year. Yeah. Now these events have been independently verified by scientists without any reference to the Great Year model whatsoever. So,
whoa, that's interesting.
Right? So it's not like when they were mapping these events out, they were like, oh well, this fits here on the Great Year, right? But we'll get into it. So remember, the 6,480 years was the bull, the lion, the scorpion, and the man.
The beast, the four beasts.
So each of the seasons of the Great Year is inaugurated by a transformative event, a catastrophe.
So real quick, those dots right there are the ones that could potentially end humanity of all these events, correct? Okay, so it all happened at the beginning of a new season, not a new month.
Yeah, new season, excuse me.
Wow. No, you said season. I'm just connecting the dots for myself.
I might have said month too.
Wow. So let me just real quick.
Go ahead.
You'll see the Otter event and the Dansgaard event. If you're looking at that, you'll be, what is that? And the Oshger event is when a rapid climate fluctuation takes place. 8,400 years ago at Taurus the Bull, it happened. A Heinrich event are when large chunks of ice break off. That happened going into Aries 52,000 years ago, 2 great years from the present. It happened 65,000 years ago going into Leo, if you look at that chart. 39,000 years ago going into Leo, also 65,000 years ago going into Leo, and 39,000 years ago going into Leo. So it happened going into Leo a lot. 12,600 years ago, it happened going into Leo before present. That's our event. That's recorded in all these cultures. That's our ending of the Ice Age. So that was a Heinrich event, I guess, because that was the flooding and or at least what they recorded at that time. So, I mean, it was caused by comets and all kind of shit, but, you know, the mass flooding came from the ice caps just being shattered and everything melting. So they recorded a Heinrich event. But they'll probably record comets and stuff there too. But the Greenland Blitz 4 great years ago, 104,000 coming into Aries, was a 31-kilometer wide impact crater below the surface of the Big Hiawatha Ice Glacier. An iron asteroid 1.5 kilometers wide smashed Earth. That was the Greenland Blitz. There's the Osis event, which I believe are great oxidation events. It's what I could have found with that. So it's a time period in prehistoric history where the Earth's atmosphere and shallow oceans experience a rise in oxygen. Molecular oxygen produced naturally in the atmosphere began to accumulate. Atmosphere changed to an oxidizing atmosphere from a reducing atmosphere, which is when there's hydrogen and carbon that can help reduce oxygen. So it's instead of oxidizes and lots of life. Oh yeah, so it oxidizes and lots of life dies off. So it becomes a oxidizing atmosphere where it's just building up oxygen instead of reducing it, which you need hydrogen and carbon to do. So Osis Event 21 happened 84,000 years ago at Taurus. Coming out of it, Osis 14 and 15 happened 52,000 years ago. 2 great years from today going into Aries. There's the Toba super eruption happened in Sumatra, Indonesia, at the site of present-day Lake Toba. Volcano caused the winter. It caused a volcanic
winter.
Yeah, I mistyped it. Sorry. It caused the volcanic winter around the whole world for almost 10 years. It took possibly 1,000 years to cool. So that's what would happen if all these comets hit like they said it did 12,600 years ago. Is not only do you have the fire and the flood, but you have all the debris and the ash in the sky forever, which is what some people think was the Dark Ages, because there is a recorded time where the sunlight went away for a long time, and it could only be explained by debris in the air from comets and stuff.
Oh.
So I think that's it. 2 major climate shifts happen going into Leo as well. The Salian climate shift and a terminal substage southeast climate shift. So that's it.
So, sorry.
You're good. But that's crazy, man. I cannot
It's
imagine.
crazy that all these events were independently verified and that it all lines up with.
Yeah, without knowing the great year and all that, it just lines up there.
And yeah, it's fucking wild, man. And it's wild if the ancients were using this type of system. All right, let me read through my notes right here real quick.
Go ahead.
And sorry, man, my fucking phone was blowing up for this conference call coming up. I apologize, people. So it certainly seems from the data set that it shows the correlation, right, of each of the seasons of the great year being inaugurated by a catastrophe. It seems that from a study that the intervals, the susceptibility of something happening goes up over these sets of time. So, and he gives like a pretty good metaphor or analogy. So imagine if you're just driving on a lonely country road and you're kicked back and you're relaxed. However, when you approach a busy intersection, all of a sudden you have to sit up straight, you have to pay attention, you have to make sure you don't get T-boned. All right. Well, every time you cross one of these busy intersections, your possibility of an accident occurring goes up much higher than when you're on a lonely country part of the road. So our planet is on a cosmic highway around the galaxy. We're now beginning to understand that pattern of the galaxy and that there is a tempo of these orbital revolutions. And we're on these orbital cycles. So there seems to be a tempo of delivery of the cosmic matter to our solar system. It doesn't seem to be random. The delivery of the cosmic material and the energy pulses that affect the Earth are on. Oh, it keeps repeating that over and over. So let me skip ahead. Yeah, and so I mean, the point of basically everything we've been talking about over the past 4 podcasts is that's one of the things the most important things we need to understand from these ancient cultures. They seem to have had a grasp on that cosmic tempo. And North America was ground zero for the last great global catastrophe. And there's a bunch of fingerprints here that show, cosmic fingerprints here that show that. We just haven't had the perspective or scale to see these fingerprints and understand what happened. When you walk amongst rubble like ants, it's hard for you to look at your landscape and understand that. So we have made our entire reality on top of our old broken world. So if you think about gravel, which is just pulverized rock all over the planet, we have deposits of these everywhere. How does gravel get made? Well, it's either modern machinery crushing it or a massive amounts of force. So where he was at when he was doing this lecture in Georgia, there was a lot of red clay. But if you look underneath the red clay, there are striations. He does construction, and when he's excavating in the area, a lot of times what he finds in this red clay are these giant boulders. So remember, we have striations and giant boulders.
What's a striation?
Striation is like lines that go through that go through the red clay.
Oh,
So if you have striations in these giant boulders, how did that get there? Well, the stratifications or the striations occur from flowing water, or giant flowing mud flow is how this particular one was made. You just can't see it because it's been covered by 10,000 years of vegetation and growth on top of it. But if you go further out west, you can see it a little easier. So basically, those striations and those boulders that you find in that red clay they got there from one of these great catastrophes and these giant mud flows that covered most of North America at the end of the Younger Dryas, right? And this is just an image of the red clay in Georgia. And then he goes on to talk about the Grand Coulee Dam. It's the largest dam in North America. The coulee itself is a giant scar. It's just an overhead look at it there.
Choo.
Grand Coulee below Dry Falls.
I bet they got some good fishing in there, boy.
When we look at this shot right here, what this is actually showing, and it's hard for us when we're just kind of looking at it from the road level of what happened. These are giant channels that were dug out during this catastrophe. It dug out 200 feet of surface material. That's where you see these like cliffs right here. This was all dug out by a giant catastrophe.
Oh, I was like, dude, I was about to ask you manually. I don't know what the fuck I was thinking.
This was a cosmic event.
Yeah.
This is Dry Falls from the air.
That's an asteroid impact,
so
obviously.
Before the event, there was so think of this picture right here, right? So before the event, there was 200 feet of material on top of this. So this is the after. This would have been what it looked like before.
Whoa.
Pretty fucking wild, huh?
That's a lot of land, man.
That is a lot. That's a pretty catastrophic event.
Dude.
And then he has a relief map more of the upper Grand Coulee area.
It's like a whole city. It's like just taking a spoon and scraping New York out.
And these it also made these cataracts, which are, this is a cataract.
Hey, did you know that 75% of Japanese optometrists actually have cataracts? Did you know that?
No. Hey, hold on. I'm getting a phone call, man. Can I answer this real quick? I'm sorry. You just cut this part out. All right.
Yo.
So we left off talking about these cataracts here.
Yeah, the cataracts. I was telling you that 75% of Japanese optometrists have cataracts. Did you know that?
No.
The other 25% drive Town-Cars.
So fucking stupid, bro. You're so dumb. All right. So these cataracts were formed. I'm only not acknowledging that joke because we have to move fast. We have 20 minutes to finish this. All right. So these things were formed by a catastrophe. A lot of, and we're gonna get to this later, but
real quick.
Modern scientists. Go ahead.
My wonderful wife is Asian, and I told her that joke, and she didn't get mad at me, so it's okay.
Yeah.
Just if anybody wants to like
my wife, so
make this video go viral and try to get me canceled, please do. We need to get this show out there.
Please do.
Go ahead.
Overcome because the intention wasn't bad, so fuck you. Go fuck yourself. Yeah, modern scientists would argue that some of this landscape was made by normal erosion, right?
Yeah, just normal shit.
There's no way that this was made with normal erosion.
With wind,
the jaggedness of it, with wind and things like that.
Wind and sand.
It would all be eroded and rounded edges, right? All right, so let's look at Niagara Falls. This is Niagara Falls right here. And if you look at the way it erodes faster at the middle and slower along the edges there. It has that classic U shape. And this is just another angle of it. But you can see this is the common erosion pattern for for a waterfall. This is dry falls. And if you look at the bedrock, there had to have been a lot of force exerted to remove a lot of that. So how does Niagara compare to these abandoned cataracts? So this is dry falls, right? This is Niagara Falls inside of dry falls.
Whoa.
So imagine the water flow around this.
Oh, man.
So that's not the same scale. So at one point, there was water flowing across this landscape that was dozens of times greater than every single river on Earth flowing at once.
It's like looking at Niagara Falls. You can just it's like 3 Niagara Falls on top of each other is the depth, and then it's. You could line it. Yeah,
flowing right here.
For a long time.
In every single river on Earth. So how would you explain an event like that? Well, we're going to get to it, but obviously it would have been some type of cosmic catastrophic event. This is looking south from the north end of the Lower Grand Coulee, just below Dry Falls. The pre-flood land was at the arrows in this picture. So that's what these arrows are at. So this would have been one consistent landscape across.
Wow.
Where these arrows are pointing at.
And you said that
this was all basically excavated by a giant flow of water.
Wow. And you said that when that was flowing as a big river, it contained more water than all the rivers on Earth right now.
Yep.
Wow.
It was a flow dozens of times greater than every single river flowing on Earth at once.
Man.
So as the waters of the giant flood began to slow down, they were filled with rock and boulders. Well, basically, it was essentially a flood that drowned North America.
Mm-hmm.
The boulders got there through giant icebergs, and we see these giant boulders scattered everywhere. This is along the Columbia Valley at the mouth of the McNeil Canyon near Lake Chelan, however the fuck you say that. This is people next to that boulder for scale.
Dude, look how big that is for water to carry it, man. Jesus.
Yeah, it's huge.
It's bigger than a big house. If you were to buy a big fucking house, it's bigger than that.
So this is another iceberg, a boulder that was carried by an iceberg.
It's the size of an apartment
on top of a hillside. 400 feet above the Columbia River right now. So an iceberg carrying this boulder would have been the size of a tanker ship.
Dude, and they're just sprinkled along the land just randomly. This
is Boulder Park.
Wow. Why do they call it Boulder Park?
Because there's a shitload of boulders everywhere.
Oh, okay, I get it. I see it.
And everyone drives by these things every day. They don't even realize where they come from.
They don't realize they're driving in the middle of the most chaotic shit that ever happened to wipe out their history.
Look at this person standing right there. So where did the icebergs come from? Well, they came from glaciers. If you go back 12,900 years ago, there was a giant stretch of ice over North America. It stretched from the Atlantic to the Pacific Ocean and from the northern U.S. to the Arctic Circle. And geologically, this is what it looked like, right? This is North America. Stretch of ice right there.
Wow.
Geologically, it disappeared basically overnight, like that. So how did that happen? That fucking fast.
Wow.
There would have been a massive amount of energy necessary to remove that kind of ice. So in the process of removing that ice, it was simultaneously melted and broken into millions and millions of pieces and flowed into rivers that were sometimes thousands of feet deep. So if you travel across the landscape, you can see the wreckage spread as far as the eye can see. Look at the sharp edge right there.
It's literally a huge mountain range.
Right. And just imagine that water. You see this flat area right here? Water carved all that shit out.
Water, boulders,
Water
iceberg,
flow.
trees,
Look at a fucking mountain, right? 1,000-foot mountain, and
dead
just imagine a
animals.
river flowing that deep.
Man, that's epic, dude.
Yeah.
I would not. It's the type of river, if you stood close to the edge, you might pee yourself. You might pee your pants. That's
Yeah.
beautiful. That's a beautiful picture now. I mean,
Well, this is like before the event. What he's talking about is this landscape was one continuous swoop right here. Like this was all
yeah.
continuous. And the locals who swim in camp here don't know that story. And modern geologists, as he goes on, will recognize that this was created by giant melt water flow, but they won't recognize that it happened as part of one of these events. Gravel deposits with striations that indicate water flow, right? It was a giant catastrophic event that deposited this gravel right here.
Mm.
The kind of the striations,
Mm-hmm.
lines.
Mm.
This is a rock that is at Calgary Candy. This rock had to be floated from its original position in Mount Edith to the prairie in Alberta. It wasn't transported in the glacier because it would have been ground up. So this stone is 18,000 tons and was quarried over the continental divide of the United States.
18,000 tons.
18,000 tons and quarried over the continental divide of the United States. Look at it. Ginormous. This is where it came from. So it came from Mount Edith Cavell to Octox, Alberta, Canada.
Mm.
And there are thousands of examples around the globe of these catastrophic events. He goes on. So 100,000 years ago, this volcano erupted, but some 11 to 12,000 years ago, it was filled up with water, creating those striations. So this is the Valles Caldera. That is it being filled up. So this is more evidence of the flood. He goes back on to the Cataracts and talks about how this was more evidence of the flood. He talks about Monument Valley in Arizona and how at one point Monument Valley was continuous flat rock, but something had to come along and remove and excavate all of the rock to leave the buttes and pinnacles. So
Dude.
he argues that, all right, so was it a slow process? Was it wind? Was it water? Considering the amount of sandstone that was removed, if this was all one continuous plane, just imagine that. Where's the rest of that sandstone at?
Yeah, for anyone listening to this, it's you've seen it before. It's that
Monument Valley. Look it up.
yeah, it's just those big looks like the Grand Canyon, but a big empty plain with just little pieces of the Grand Canyon sticking up. That's that's like a day's worth of hikes right
Yeah.
there. Just carved out. And they left that's insane. Look at that, where the water just swirls around and the rocks and shit destroy it.
So ancient people understood the history of the earth better than what we consider to be the norm for how our geological landscape is created. So we think now that it's created over long, slow, continual processes. They understood that we had periods of peace interrupted by periods of catastrophe. Colorado River, Horseshoe Bend.
Wow.
What it looked like before. Look at that.
Just a chunk of land. It didn't look like anything.
In 8 million years time, a modern river wouldn't remove that amount of rock. So where would it go? The canyon cutting was a series of episodes. Let's see. I got like 9 minutes. I got to get on this call, so I'm trying to hurry.
Word. Perfect. I got to leave right after 5, so that works.
So, all right. So he highlights the onset of the late Wisconsin Ice Age and the onset of the Younger Dryas climate catastrophe on the Great Year scale. So something brought the winter of the Great Year to a sudden end and caused a sudden amount of melting of ice that happened extremely rapidly. All over the world, we find evidence for giant events that cause flooding and catastrophic events. Slow erosion rounds things off into nubs. Present day forces do rounding of these things off. If we look at the cataracts and the pinnacles, there's evidence of a forceful event tearing into the earth. So if you look at this photo I have on the screen here, which is, I think this is one of the arches in Monument Valley, there's like a big hole that's like kind of perfectly formed. That hole got there via an underwater tornado. There are dozens of those potholes found in boulders like that throughout the Southwest.
Yeah, it's weird because that hole is at the top of what looks like
Yeah,
a 50-foot wall. It's like, what carved that hole up there? It looks like a little
that high.
secret hole in a video game that you can't get to without something. It's just up there and it's dark.
You know, and then also, how does slow erosion explain arches like this?
It
Actually,
doesn't.
the
It's so
erosion
wild.
that's happening right now is destroying these arches. Under present day conditions, there's nothing like this forming right now. There's nothing like this forming under the present day weather conditions we have. It's actually destroying these structures. So that's that argument against this slow erosion. It's just more images of destructive forces.
Whoa.
Like, how is that? How is something like that created?
It looks like the handle of a sword, but it's a 50-ton piece of stone.
Modern geologists maintain that this is created over long periods of time. The problem with that is that modern erosion is destroying these things. This particular sandstone structure. This is interesting, right? So this guy comes across this. And this is from an old geology account from 1953. And he says, all right, the extension of the boulder accumulation across the entire valley bottom indicates an interruption of the normal progress of stream erosion. It is evident that the pre-existing balance between stream transportation and the supply of material from the bordering slopes must have been completely disrupted for a time. The main section of, so you can see this guy is struggling here to describe what is happening. He can't accept the fact that the normal geological forces couldn't have formed, like what their normal understanding of the geological forces could have formed this.
Yeah.
He's trying to make sense of it, right? And he just can't, because he's not accepting that it could have been a catastrophic event that moved all of this shit here at once.
The boulders accumulating across the valley are not what happens from natural erosion. So he's saying there must have been an interruption of this normal progress. He's like asking the question
Another
that's been
one right
answered.
here. The main section of Hickory Run Boulder Field is a fish-shaped bouldery tract measuring roughly 400 by 1,800 feet. The general surface of the boulder field is barren expanse of jumbled cobbles and boulders of widely varied size and shape. The tumultuous appearance of the surface suggests arrested motion after forcible movement, somewhat in the fashion of an ice jam in a river. So in 1953, no one had conceptual framework to understand something like this. And we can find things like this all over the place if we know what to look for. And then he goes on to a discussion about scale and variance. So we might not finish this today. Actually, we're real close. So let me try and burn through it because we got 4 minutes.
Yeah, because this is what I want to see is those ripple waves.
All right. So I have a picture of current rippled sand deposit on the floodplain after Hurricane Ivan flooding. And then he uses a tape measure to measure the chord length and amplitude of the ripples.
Mm-hmm. It's like what you see on a beach when the water runs back and it ripples the sand. When water recedes, it ripples the sand.
And in our modern architecture, here we have a high water mark that we can see in this structure. This is another example of a ripple, but this is over a giant plain. So imagine, look at this.
It looks the exact same.
Now, there's a 3-story building. You see it right there?
No. It's like
this is a 3-story building right here.
Oh,
these are giant ripples.
They're like hills for miles.
Giant. So imagine the water flow that would have had to been flowing right there to create something like that.
Dude.
All right, so I'm getting to my conclusion. I got 3 minutes. So in conclusion, there are two kinds of change on Earth: gradualistic, what we have experienced in modern times, and concentrated change, which is catastrophic change. This concentrated change can change as much in a few days as 5,000 years in gradual change time frame. This event of 12,900 years ago caused extinction of half of the great mammals on Earth. All over the world, from all cultures, we find the same themes of the world being destroyed by flood and fire. Cosmic dragons attacking the Earth. We can go on and on with the list of cultural accounts with descriptions of these great events. The patterns of time are governed by the same numbers we find in sacred geometry. We find them governing the tempo of these changes. These ancient cultures felt they had a duty to preserve this knowledge so that the next time we approach one of these event nodes, one of these intersections in the cosmic space, that we have the most information we could possibly have to make this event as survivable as possible. Boom.
I love this.
Why they left
I like the
behind.
I like the dragon comet. You know, all that symbolism with the falcon and the dragon and the serpent and the.
So I do have a hard stop. I have to go ahead and hop off.
Word.
So I'm gonna hop off.
All right, thanks everybody.
And thanks everybody.
Listen to the podcast app, listen to the ads, help us get paid, subscribe to YouTube. We'll see you next time. I know what topic we're going to do for the next one, Jesse. You'll have to buy a book.
All right, tell me what. I'll do it.
I won't say it on air. I'll text it to you.
Text it.
All right, thanks, everybody. Peace, everybody.